On the evening of December 14, 2019, Madison Square Garden stood tall under the winter sky, its aura timeless, its walls steeped in boxing lore. The venue has long been a coliseum for champions, and on this particular night, it played host to a confrontation that was supposed to be a coronation. Terence "Bud" Crawford, already heralded as one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of his generation, was set to defend his WBO welterweight championship. The Nebraska native, undefeated and admired for his versatility and precision, wasn't just walking into another title defense. He was expected to put on a masterclass. A night of dominance was anticipated. A reminder of his supremacy was forecasted. But across the ring stood a storm no one saw coming. Egidijus Kavaliauskas, nicknamed the Mean Machine, came in with less fanfare but not less fire. The Lithuanian warrior was undefeated and unrelenting, not merely showing up for a paycheck or a noble loss. He arrived in New York with conviction, with fists ready to rip through illusion and a hunger to tear the throne from the champion's grasp. Kavaliauskas brought a kind of determination that could not be measured by pre-fight predictions or oddsmakers' lines. As the opening bell reverberated through the garden's rafters, the air carried the scent of curiosity and expectation. Fans had packed the historic arena to witness another page written in Crawford's storied journey, yet very few suspected that they were about to witness a tale of vulnerability, grit, and the razor-thin edge that separates greatness from disaster. The first round unfolded with the measured tempo of a tactical engagement. Crawford, ever the technician, employed his usual blend of movement and mental warfare. His ability to shift stances fluidly from orthodox to southpaw is a puzzle few have solved. He circled like a panther, poised and calculating. But unlike many of Crawford's previous foes, Kavaliauskas didn't bite at the feints. He didn't overreact to Crawford's probing right or the deceptive footwork designed to create angles. He stood his ground with eerie calm, maintaining balance, timing, and composure that surprised more than a few ringside analysts. This wasn't a challenger overwhelmed by the moment. This was a man who had come to win. In those early exchanges, the distance between both fighters was razor-thin, both in space and skill. Each studied the other, neither reckless nor overly aggressive. Kavaliauskas kept a tight guard, shifting his weight efficiently, showing a sense of purpose with every step forward. Crawford, meanwhile, remained patient but alert. He tested angles and looked for entry points but found none of the typical defensive lapses he often exploits. Kavaliauskas wasn't there to be dissected like a textbook victim. He was a puzzle, in his own right, one that Crawford couldn't easily crack. Then came the third round, a moment that threatened to redefine everything. Kavaliauskas, who had been waiting like a coil of wire, suddenly unleashed a violent, technically perfect, right hand that broke through Crawford's defenses. It wasn't a wild punch, it was surgical. It landed flush right on the chin. And it did something rarely seen. Crawford stumbled. His legs, those reliable foundations of balance and movement, betrayed him. For a flicker of time, the great champion looked mortal, vulnerable. The garden erupted in gasps and murmurs as Crawford tried to regain his footing, eyes wide and legs searching for stability. It was a visual many weren't prepared for. Terence Crawford, shaken and reeling, not from a slip or misstep, but from a clean shot to the head. Yet, the referee made no call. There was no knockdown ruled. The action resumed, but the debate would linger long after the fight's conclusion. Replays showed Crawford stumbling back, clearly affected by the punch. His glove never touched the canvas, but the signs of damage were impossible to ignore. Whether the referee missed it or judged it differently didn't matter in that instant. Crawford now had a problem to solve, and he had to do it immediately. The illusion of invincibility had been cracked open. Kavaliauskas smelled blood, and for a moment the champion looked like prey. The Lithuanian closed the gap, applied pressure, and fired a barrage of punches designed to finish what he'd started. But he hesitated just enough. Whether it was caution, disbelief at what he'd achieved, or simple exhaustion, That window of hesitation gave Crawford time to clinch, to evade, and most importantly, to recover. Those next few moments were about survival, not domination. Crawford, to his credit, understood this. He bought time with clinches, used his legs to dance away from danger, and slowly began the process of recalibrating. Something had changed in the champion's eyes. The third round had woken up a different version of Terence Crawford. Gone was the cool surgeon. In his place emerged the brawler, the warrior with something to prove. Crawford is not just a boxer, he is a prideful fighter. And in that moment, his pride had been challenged. The very essence of his reputation, his status as a pound-for-pound king, was on the line. He wasn't just defending a title anymore. He was defending his legacy. What followed was a shift not just in tactics but in temperament. Crawford turned up the aggression. He began walking Kavaliauskas down. His jabs became weapons of declaration, and his hooks were statements of ownership. He dared his opponent to trade, to engage, and in doing so, flipped the script. The psychological advantage began to tilt back in his favor. For every punch Kavaliauskas landed, Crawford delivered two with sharper intent. He wasn't boxing anymore. He was fighting. The rounds ticked by with a rising sense of urgency and violence. Crawford's accuracy increased. His footwork became less about escape and more about control. He cut off the ring, set traps of his own, and began luring the Lithuanian into dangerous pockets. Still, Kavaliauskas didn't wilt. He absorbed punishment, shook it off, and returned fire. This wasn't a man afraid of Crawford. He continued to throw heavy hands, occasionally snapping the champion's head back with clean connections that reminded everyone that the fight was far from over. Yet the tide had turned. Crawford was now imposing his rhythm. He'd found his groove, and within it, a darker edge had emerged. Every punch he landed carried more venom. His body shots were thunderous. His uppercuts, timed with vicious precision, rattled the challenger's resolve. Slowly but surely, Kavaliauskas began to show the signs of battle. The swelling under his eyes, the slowing footwork, and the slight delay in his reactions, they all spoke to the attrition he was experiencing. By the later rounds, Crawford had stripped away the Lithuanian's early confidence and replaced it with hesitation. Still brave, still pushing forward, Kavaliauskas was no longer the same threat he had been. The spark had dimmed. The aggression was still there, but the sharpness had dulled. And Crawford, sensing his moment, unleashed fury with no restraint. A looping right hand, calculated and crushing, landed with thudding finality. Kavaliauskas collapsed, dazed and disoriented, to the canvas. He beat the count, but everything about him said trouble. The eyes were foggy, the legs unsteady, and the body language that of a man nearing the end. Crawford, unmerciful in the ring, saw it all. And he pressed on. He resumed his attack with combinations that blurred the line between art and brutality. Kavaliauskas, gallant to the last, tried to respond, but his punches lacked their earlier bite. He was fighting on heart alone now. The champion, however, was relentless. He pressed forward, cornered his foe, and unleashed another devastating series, this time ending with a right uppercut that folded Kavaliauskas once more. Down again, shaky on the rise. The writing was etched in sweat and pain. The final sequence came with an air of inevitability. Crawford, assured now of his dominance, threw a perfectly timed right hook. It landed square, and Kavaliauskas dropped for the third time. This time, the referee intervened. The bout was over. Crawford raised his arms. Not in relief, but in declaration. He had stared into the abyss and walked away with everything still intact. After the fight, Crawford dismissed the controversy of the third-round scare. To him, there was no knockdown, no real crisis, just another night of resistance met and overcome. But the images lingered, the moment when his legs buckled, the time he looked human. Analysts debated the referee's decision, argued over the fight's trajectory, and speculated on what might have been if a knockdown had been acknowledged. Yet none of that could undo what happened. Crawford had been tested in a way few had seen before. He had been cracked, staggered, nearly exposed. But he responded like champions must, with fire. He didn't cruise to victory. He crawled, clawed, and then surged. His win was not gifted by talent alone. It was earned in blood, sweat, and raw determination. As for Kavaliauskas, he left the ring defeated but not diminished. His stock rose in value. He had rattled the champion, hurt him, made him fight for every inch. There are losses that diminish a fighter's name, and there are those that add to their lore. For the Mean Machine, this was the latter. Inside the hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden, another tale was added to the annals of boxing, not of perfection but of perseverance, not of ease but of resilience. On that December night, Terence Crawford reminded the world that greatness isn't forged solely through skill, but through surviving storms, confronting danger, and finding a way to win when everything starts to fall apart. He reminded everyone watching, there are levels to this game, and he still resides on the highest one.